Okay, so this is Mel Capone doing my first tutorial or my first video. I'm going to discuss putting the clutch on a .21, and the same concept would apply for a any other size motor as well. But some of the components you see I have here, you can see my tools, and this is a tool to hold a flywheel while you try to tighten it. So this just goes on the flywheel on the pins. It helps you hold the flywheels. It's an opener tool. And then you have, this will turn your nut, your clutch nut, to tighten your spring tension. Tighten or loosen your spring tension. And also, I'm not going to go into this today, but one thing you want to do is lap your clutch. So you can use some fine grit lapping compound, and this slips on the clutch tool. And I'm not going to do it now because it's kind of hard to do, but you press that all the way down to it seats here, and then you use well, I might as well just go ahead and show you. So it's hard to get on there. You have to be careful not to damage your shoe. And then you will put your bearings on here, and you put your lapping compound on your clutch shoe and possibly inside your bell as well. And you will lap that shoe to that bell just to kind of seat it. So of course you would have your bearings on here. And there's something I forgot. Let me get my bearings. Hold on. And voila, bearings. So you're gonna have 2 bearings to go in the clutch. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is, well, first of all, notice that there's a ton of shims. So it takes a lot of shims to get your clutch set just right. So one thing you want to consider is clutch gap. You're going to have two clutch gaps. One is going to be the gap between the bell and the shoe. You have a proper gap there. And then you'll have a clutch gap that's going to be for the outside gap. Is going to be your end play, what is called an end play. And that's going to be, you're going to need gap here, and you're going to need gap here. So we'll go over that. Let me take this back off. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you guys can hear the airplane going over in the background. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, this tapered sleeve here, you got different sizes. You want to make sure that the one you use doesn't cause your clutch bell to sit way out from the motor. You don't want your clutch bell, your flywheel. You don't want your flywheel sitting way out. You don't want it sitting too close. You want to choose one that's going to make it sit just right. I found that these fit a lot better. So the first thing you want to do is pop this on. And it feels good sitting on there. It didn't go on hard. It didn't go on too easy. Next thing you want to do is just slip your flywheel on. And you can see that's a pretty big gap. I really don't like that much gap. I like for it to sit back further if I can. So I didn't take out a lot of these. I just took out a few. I think the rest of these are thicker, so there's no need of me trying to fix that. So for now, we'll keep it there. And then that's going to seat back just a little bit, not much. So the next thing you want to do is put your clutch nut on. Just turn that down by hand, and here's where your tools come in handy. Instead of trying to mash on this with pliers and scar it all up, you can put this on with your off-in the clutch tool. Just have to find the pin seat. There we go. Take your socket. It's a 10 millimeter. Got a little oil coming out of there. So I'm just going to hold this, tighten it down. All right, so you see that seated back just a little bit, but not much. So I mean, I don't prefer that much gap. I'd rather have it sitting back a little closer than that. But that's good enough for this today. And another thing, you see how this oil is seeping out of this motor? This is why I put a diaper on my car at the end of running. So at the end of the day, even I don't care if I'm running a 4-day event. At the end of the day, I'll put a diaper around this flywheel and it catches that oil. The last thing you want to do is have oil seep out of your front bearing and car sitting upside down somewhere or whatever, and it oozes out and get on this flywheel and makes its way around to this clutch shoe. Oil and clutch shoe will never mix. All right. So next, you can follow your instructions on this with the clutch instructions. So next will be the flyweights. Let's stick the flyweights in. And just so you know, I'm not showing you guys like my standard parts. These are just parts I'm using for this demonstration. I do like the 4-pin shoe, which you can't get anymore, but I do like the 4-pin shoe better than the 3-pin just because I started with the 3-pin, 4-pin, and that's what I know best. Next is your pressure plate. So you put your flyweights in. Your flyweights is what's going to give you your force to press your shoe forward. So put your pressure plate on, and notice how that just goes on. It's like gripping. This stuff has to move in and out. So if you got friction here, you need to fix that or check to make sure you got the right parts. Next goes on your clutch shoe. Same concept. That shoe should just slip right on. If it don't, your clutch won't work correctly. And a lot of you guys is pressing that shoe on and it's not moving in and out freely. What are you gonna think when you hit the throttle and those flywheels go to push out? It's not gonna move freely. You're gonna have a bogus clutch. Spring clutch, spring cup. Drop your spring cup down in there. Next go your spring. And I do not run this spring. This is not the spring I run. And I'm just using these components for demonstration. Next is your clutch nut. Here come your other tool. So use this tool to tighten it, but you want to make sure that you get it started with your hand first, if possible. So you got to press down on it just to get it started. And maybe this is the wrong nut. Let's take the spring out. No, it's the right nut. So I'm not pressing hard enough with my hand. So I'm just going to use my tool and be real careful not to cross thread. The tool has little pins that go in the grooves of the clutch nut. Press that down. Got it started. Okay. So there's a secret to how much you turn this nut to give that spring the right compression. So you turn that to wherever you think it needs to be. I don't like the way that looks. It looks cocked. It's no good. All right, so let me get another nut, and let me see if I can get another nut. That might be a bogus spring nut that I had in the past that probably need to be thrown away. Hold on. Okay. I don't know how the focus is. I'm trying to look through my phone. I'm not sure if that's focus. I hope it is. But I went and got another nut. And I'm just going to turn this down to a certain point. Nothing specific. Just to get it past the end of the, just to get it flush or just slightly past the end of the clutch nut, the flywheel nut. So I'll turn a little bit more just to make sure it's clear. Okay. So now that looks a lot better. It's not like the other one. The other one was cocked on there. I probably need to just throw that away. All right. So now that tool won't be needed anymore. So now let's put our bearings in our clutch bell. Pop that outside bearing in. Pop the inside bearing in. So you got a bearing on the inside, bearing on the outside. You want to make sure that's seated all the way. don't do what I'm doing here. Probably need something better to see that I'm just doing it real quick for the video. All right, got my bearings in. The inside bearing just falls out. So now if I was to put this on there now, we would be negative clutch depth, clutch gap. That's a negative clutch gap. Right now, that's not going to spin free. Your car is going to walk forward. You're going to have no clutch action. You're going to bog off the line. You go to, this is for drag racing. I probably should have said it in the first part, but I'm setting this clutch up for drag racing, which could also work for street cars as well. So that's negative clutch. I'm rubbing the shoe. I don't want that. So what you have to do is find your shims and find a bunch of shims that'll get you up off. So I just put one shim on. I already know that that's not going to do it. I'm still going to be negative. And so I'm still rubbing. You can see I'm turning the flywheel by turning the clutch belt. Shouldn't be able to do that. So let's take that off. And this is a ton of back and forth till you just leave that shim on there. I'll put another thick shim on there. These are thick shims so far. I already know that's probably not going to be positive either. All right, still rubbing. Put another thick shim on. Could get away with a thinner shim, but just put another thick one on for now. Getting better, but I'm still negative. I'm still touching. So I know I'm close now, so now I can go with a thin shim. To go with these thin shims, I think these are like 4,000 thick. For right now, I'm not paying attention to the orientation of the shims. I'm just trying to find positive, or really what your ultimate goal is to find zero. You want to find absolute zero as close as possible with the tools you have. So now I'm in the positive. I'm no longer rubbing the flywheel, so I can spin this and the flywheel moves just because I'm turning it. You know, just a little friction there, but it's no longer touching the clutch belt. So now, if that's a 4,000s shim, I can say in my head, I can guess in my head that if I took 2,000s out, if I put like a 2,000 shim in there, I'm probably going to be zero. I know if I take the 4,000 out, I'm negative. So with the 2,000, I'm probably zero. And for me, that's close enough for me to know, you know, where my clutch is at. I'm close enough to zero at that point. You can take like one of these shims out, thicker shims out, and start playing around with combinations of shims until you get a lot closer to what I got. But I think I'm within plus and minus 2,000s within being called zero. So I'm gonna be happy with that. So what I can do is just take these shims and call it 2,000s, positive 2,000. Once positive 4,000s. Excuse me. Really be proud. I'm going to say if I took 2,000 out, I would say I'm zero. I got an extra 2,000s in, so I'm going to say I'm positive 2,000s on my clutch deck. On my end gap. There I go again. On my clutch bell gap. That's the inside gap. So I'm going to arrange these shims now. I'm just going to keep up with these shims now. I don't want to mix them up with the other ones. I'm going to arrange these shims so that I have like the thick one on the back side. Then I'm going to put a thin one sandwiched inside. And then I'm going to put, these two are pretty much the same size. So I'm going to put those out here. And what I want, really, to be honest with you, you really want something that won't touch both races of the bearing. But I really don't have that up here right now, so I'm just going to go with what I got. And that's good enough. So now I'm going to put this on. I'm going to say I got positive 2,000 clutch gap. So you can say positive 2,000. Well, from here, you're going to have to find what works for you. You can put more shims in here. You can put thinner 4,000s. You can keep stacking 4,000s. You can keep stacking other thicknesses of shims. Regardless of what you put in there next to create the best end gap, clutch bell gap, you want to keep up with that number. So if you put, let's say you put whatever, let's say I ran this at 2,000s end gap, clutch bell gap, and I go out and make a run, and it's the best run I ever run in my life. I know 2,000s is where I want to be. Let's say I put 20,000s in here, and I go out and make a run. If I put, so I would need to put 18 in here to make 20,000s because I said I got +2. I go out and make a run, make the best run of my life. Clutch working good, great 6-foot times. Then I can say 20,000 is my gap. So you find what works for you. So for now, I'm gonna leave that 2,000s in there, and you can see it's spinning free. It's spinning free. It's not dragging the flywheel. Everything's great. So the next now you got to find the gap out here so that you can lock this bell on. And before we go any further, I want to look at something here. I want to show you something. I've noticed a lot of guys are taking and putting 440s in the end of their cranks. All these motors, every motor I've ever dealt with, it's never been a 440 thread in the end of the crank, in the end of the crankshaft. It's always a 350, 3mm by 0.5. And you can see the difference. This is a 350. I don't know if we're going to be able to show that. I'm just not going to pick up. It's a fine thread. The 440 is going to be a lot coarse thread. You'll be able to see lots of gap between the thread. Where this 350, it's going to be a lot finer. I'm sorry, I can't show that better. It's just not focusing. Okay. And so these won't mate with each other. Same thing as inside that crank. You put a 440 in here, you're going to screw up your crank threads. So you should be able to put this in here and turn free. There it is, going in freely. So the alternate shim kit in most motors, most clutches come with a thrust bearing. With drag racing, we don't run thrust bearing. We throw the thrust bearing in a trash can. We never use them. This is the knuckle that comes with the clutch. And so you can take this and shave it down, or you can buy an alternate shim kit, which comes with pieces that look like this. You can take these and shave them down. You can take these knuckles and shave them down to the right distance. And I got a ton of them. And that's what it takes. It takes a ton of these because you're never going to, because of how you seek this flywheel, it's going to always change the relationship of the depth of your end of your crank to the end of your clutch bell bearing. It's always going to be variable because you're never going to be able to seat all these components at the exact same location every time. You might have a thicker pressure plate. You might have a different flywheel. You might have a different collar back here. It's going to change that distance. There's so many variables. So you got to have a bunch of these pieces over here. You can see I just got a bunch of them. I even got some that I've machined. I've taken and machined these little collars. So you're going to need an assortment of that stuff. So one thing you can do, you can measure from the end of this bell to the end of the crank. End of the bearing down to the crank. Whatever distance that is, that'll give you a good idea of where you need to be. I'm going to look at that, and I'm going to see that I need a pretty big one on there for some reason. Oh, I know why. Because this gap, that's not my normal gap. I normally like that tighter. So I'm going to need something. I'm going to pop this in and see what it looks like. This is a pretty long one here. Okay, just by holding that with my hand, you can see I got a lot of gap. I don't want that for drag racing. I don't want that clutch bell moving like that. See if I can find another one that's more suitable. All right, I'm gonna pause while I do this. So what I went and did was grab my calipers. I'm gonna measure this one. Make sure I'm on 0. Need a battery. So I'm just gonna measure the height of this collar. Not the whole collar, because you only want where it's gonna seat up against the bearing. So it looks like I got 0.151. Some people say 0.151, but I never say 0. I just say 0.151. So I'm gonna measure this other one. And that's taller. No, that's going to be a no-go. All right, I'm going to find something. I'll put you back on. Hold on. All right, so haven't found the right combination yet, but I found something that's smaller. That's 0.091. And let's say if I grab one of these other collars. So 0.91. So I know that's going to be too much. Find something thin. 0.03. That may work. If I use that with this piece, which is 0.091, well, maybe not. 94. Okay, so maybe if I use this and this in combination, I'm going to take my 3mm screw, slip the collar on, and I'm putting this little small shim on the end to make that collar taller, because I know it's shorter than what I need, because it's not the same one I had a while ago. I'm going to stick that on, see what I got. Take my Allen wrench, turn that down in there, see what happens. All right, so I got friction, not tall enough. I'm binding my clutch shoe. If I crank this engine up, it's just gonna turn the whole time. So I need another shim. So there is a shim I put in there. So here's another really, really thin shim. That's 3/1000, right at 4/1000, 4/1000 thick. Probably need a little more than that, but let's see what happens. Now that is really, really close. I don't have it tight, so if I tighten that down, it's probably gonna bind. It's really, really close. That's what you want. Just you want it to be free, but you don't want it to ever be able to bind. So I know I don't have it tight, and with a little bit of tightness, it's gonna bind probably. There you go. Just by snugging it. So I know I put that 3.5, 4/1000 in. Let's take that out. Take the whole assembly out. I still got it all on there. Both those shims still on there. You got to make sure. I only see the ones that 4/1000 still down in there. See if I can get that out. There we go. So now, see if I can find another 4/1000s or something in between. So I know that what I really need is about 2/1000s more. So that's a 7/1000s. That's gonna give me right at a little over 3/1000s more right there, because I had a 3.5. So I'm gonna pop that on, and now I really don't calculate what my end gap is. And that might not be going all the way on there. Let's see. I don't really calculate this end gap. I just go by feel. So I'm going to snug that down just a little bit. There it is. Look at that. That's what you want. Now if I pull this in and out, see that motion? That's probably about 2/1000s or 3/1000s gap. So I really could fine tune that a little bit and get that out. You probably can't see that. but that will work. That will work. So when that clutch, when these flyweights sling out of this flywheel, press that pressure plate. It pushes the clutch shoe into this clutch bell. This bell can't move but that much. So there's going to be a lot of positive connection without. What thrust burn does is allows that to slip out, and you get all this slippage off the line. When we drag racing, we don't want slippage. We want that clutch to hit. It's going to slip some. You can't control that, and you do need some. But we want that hit. We don't want a lot of negative effect. So really, I would fine tune that for my car a little bit more. But for this demonstration, not setting this up, pre-setting this up. I just did this on the fly. That's pretty decent. That's what you want. You want smooth. So you can see now what you should be looking for. From this point now, you crank your car up and mount your motor in, crank your car up, and start testing your clutch. Start pulling up on the throttle slowly, see when the clutch engages. Clean your motor out, see when the clutch engages. See if you're getting a lot of R's or if you're not getting any R's or RPM. So if you're not getting any RPM, you're going to bog off the line with drag racing with a sticky track like we run in the IMDRA with a sticky track. But if you're running street racing and you have no prep, you may want a low RPM. I'm not sure. I'm not a street racer. But from here, what I do is I grab something. I have something that can hold my flywheel. I have this pin, and I find those grooves in that nut. And there it is. I found it already. So if I feel like I got too many RPMs, I turn counterclockwise to loosen that spring. If I feel like I need more R's, I turn clockwise. You can see there it is. I just tighten that clutch up just a little bit. And a lot of times, just the smallest adjustment is all you need. People go spinning this all around, and you just get way too far off. And when you go to the line with drag racing, you go to the line and you hit your throttle. You hit the car to go. If you hear the car just come up and it ain't moving and just screaming, let off the throttle. You don't want to burn your clutch shoe up. Let off. If you hit it and it's going out of track, just let off. Your run's over. It's done. If you don't come out clean, your race is over anyway. So you don't want to damage your shoe by allowing it to slip going out of track, just burning up the shoe. You don't want to do that. And what I learned recently is, even though you lap that shoe, it may take a few runs for that shoe and that bell really to seat and change your times. So you could prematurely start adjusting this too much and get yourself way out in left field. But that's something you'll learn with experience. So that's it. That's it on setting the clutch. Just remember, this depth, you want to find your preference. I like it close. This is too far from what I normally do. There's a lot of modified components that I put in my clutch that I'm not showing here. So my concept is, I can show you how to get there, but then you need to find your own way to go faster. So I hope this has been helpful, and look forward to doing more demonstrations and showing other aspects. Maybe I can start talking about tuning, head deck, and other aspects to help someone out. All right, thank you for watching.